George Perry Floyd Jr. was born on October 14, 1973, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. From the very beginning, his life was marked by the love and support of his family. He grew up in Houston, Texas, where he attended Yates High School. It was here that he began to develop his passion for sports and his strong sense of community. Floyd was known for his athletic abilities, particularly in football and basketball. His talents on the field were matched by his dedication and hard work, earning him respect and admiration from his peers. He was described by friends and family as a gentle giant, a loving father, and a devout Christian. His faith was a cornerstone of his life, guiding him through both good times and bad. Floyd faced challenges in his life, including struggles with unemployment and addiction. Despite these obstacles, he never lost sight of his goals and continued to strive for a better future. He moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2014 for a fresh start and to be closer to family. This move represented a new chapter in his life, filled with hope and determination. He worked as a security guard and truck driver, striving to build a better future for himself and his loved ones. His work ethic and dedication were evident in everything he did. Despite his struggles, George Floyd remained a source of strength and support for those around him. His kindness and generosity left a lasting impact on everyone he met. His life, though tragically cut short, serves as a reminder of the humanity often overlooked in discussions of race and injustice. His story is a testament to the resilience and strength of the human spirit. His story, in its everyday normalcy, underscores the deep-seated biases that permeate society and disproportionately impact Black communities. It calls for a deeper reflection on the systemic issues that continue to plague our world. The world would come to know George Floyd not for his athleticism, his faith, or his love for his family, but for the way his life ended, a tragic symbol of systemic racism and police brutality. His death sparked a global movement demanding justice and equality for all. May 25, 2020, began like any other day in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city was waking up to what seemed like a normal, peaceful morning. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the city, and the residents were slowly coming alive after the long, harsh winter months. People were going about their daily routines, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. But by the end of the day, everything would change dramatically. The events that transpired would leave an indelible mark on the city and the entire nation. George Floyd's name would be etched into the collective consciousness of a nation grappling with its long and troubled history of racial injustice. His death would become a catalyst for a global movement demanding change. What started as a routine trip to a convenience store would spiral into a fatal encounter, captured on camera phones and broadcast across the globe, igniting outrage and sparking protests. The day began with Floyd visiting Cup Foods, a local store in South Minneapolis, a place he had likely visited many times before. He was accused of using a counterfeit $20 bill, a minor offense that would soon escalate beyond anyone's imagination. The store clerk called the police, setting in motion a series of events that would have far-reaching and devastating consequences for Floyd, his family, and the community. The arrival of 4 Minneapolis police officers escalated the situation, transforming what should have been a minor incident into a deadly confrontation that would be witnessed by millions. The world watched in horror as the life was slowly drained from George Floyd, his desperate pleas for breath ignored by those sworn to protect and serve. His death would become a symbol of the urgent need for justice and reform. The arrival of the police officers at Cup Foods marked a point of no return. What began as a suspicion of a minor offense quickly spiraled into a fatal encounter. Officers approached Floyd, who was sitting in a car with 2 other passengers. The situation escalated as officers attempted to remove Floyd from the vehicle. He was handcuffed and placed face down on the ground. Officer Derek Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, even as Floyd repeatedly stated he couldn't breathe and eventually lost consciousness. Despite pleas from bystanders who filmed the incident, the officers did not relent. The video footage, widely circulated online, showed the agonizing final moments of Floyd's life, his voice growing fainter with each passing moment. The footage sparked outrage and grief, igniting protests against police brutality and racial injustice across the globe. The video of George Floyd's death spread like wildfire across social media platforms. The world watched in horror and disbelief as a Black man pleaded for his life under the knee of a police officer. The outrage was immediate and global. Protests erupted in cities across the United States, from Minneapolis to New York City, Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. Millions took to the streets, demanding justice for George Floyd and an end to police brutality against Black people. The protests were not confined to the United States. Demonstrations of solidarity and calls for racial justice echoed across the globe, from London to Berlin, Sydney to Rio de Janeiro. The Black Lives Matter movement, founded in 2013 after the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's killer, experienced a resurgence of support and international recognition. Section 5. Black Lives Matter, a movement reignited. The death of George Floyd and the global protests that followed breathed new life into the Black Lives Matter movement. Founded in 2013, BLM had become a powerful voice against police brutality and racial injustice. Floyd's death, captured on video for the world to see, brought the movement's message to the forefront of global consciousness. It served as a stark reminder of the systemic racism that pervades society, disproportionately impacting Black people in all aspects of life. The protests that followed Floyd's death were some of the largest in U.S. history. They were multiracial, multi-generational, and cut across geographic and socioeconomic lines. People from all walks of life marched together, demanding an end to police brutality, systemic racism, and the dehumanization of Black people. Section 6. The Long Road to Reform, Policy Changes, and Legal Battles. The protests following George Floyd's death sparked a national reckoning on race and policing in America. Cities across the country implemented police reforms, including banning chokeholds, requiring de-escalation techniques, and increasing accountability for officer misconduct. The trial of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer who knelt on Floyd's neck, captivated the nation. On April 20, 2021, Chauvin was found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. While Chauvin's conviction was a landmark moment, it represented just one step in the long and arduous fight for racial justice. The fight for comprehensive police reform, addressing systemic racism within law enforcement and beyond, continues. Section 7. Different Perspectives, Shared Grief. The death of George Floyd sparked a range of emotions and reactions across the United States and the world. While millions mourned his loss and condemned the actions of the police officers involved, others expressed different viewpoints. Some defended the police officers, arguing they were following their training or that Floyd's death was the result of pre-existing health conditions, not police brutality. These arguments, often met with anger and frustration, highlighted the deep divisions within society regarding race and policing. Despite these differing perspectives, there was a shared sense of grief and a recognition that the events surrounding Floyd's death exposed deep wounds in the fabric of American society. The conversation transcended the specifics of the case, forcing a national reckoning on race, privilege, and the legacy of systemic racism. Section 8. George Floyd's Legacy, a Catalyst for Change. The legacy of George Floyd is forever intertwined with the fight for racial justice. His death, tragic and senseless, served as a catalyst for change, sparking a global movement demanding an end to police brutality and systemic racism. Floyd's name has become synonymous with the struggle for equality, his image a powerful symbol of the human cost of injustice. Schools, streets, and parks have been renamed in his honor, ensuring his story continues to resonate with future generations. The movement sparked by Floyd's death has led to tangible changes, from police reforms to increased awareness of systemic racism. However, the fight is far from over. The pursuit of true equality requires ongoing vigilance, uncomfortable conversations, and a commitment to dismantling systemic racism in all its forms. Section 9. The fight continues. Addressing systemic racism. The fight for racial justice extends far beyond police reform. It requires addressing systemic racism in all aspects of society, from education and healthcare to housing and employment. Systemic racism refers to the ways in which racism is embedded in the very fabric of society, manifesting in laws, policies, and institutional practices that perpetuate racial inequality. Addressing systemic racism requires a multifaceted approach. It requires acknowledging the historical and ongoing impact of racism, dismantling racist policies and practices, and creating equitable opportunities for all. It demands a shift in mindset, a willingness to challenge deeply ingrained biases, and a commitment to building a just and equitable society for all. Section 10. A Call to Action, Building a More Just Future. The death of George Floyd was a stark reminder of the work that remains to be done in the fight for racial justice. His tragic death highlighted the systemic issues that have plagued our society for far too long. It is a call to action for each and every one of us to examine our own biases, to challenge injustice wherever we see it, and to work towards building a more equitable society. This means engaging in difficult conversations, educating ourselves and others, and standing up against discrimination in all its forms. This is not a task for one race or one generation. It is a responsibility that falls on all of us, regardless of our background or age. It requires a collective effort, a willingness to listen and learn from one another, and a shared commitment to creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of the color of their skin. We must be allies to one another, supporting and uplifting voices that have been marginalized. The path to a more just future is not easy, but it is a journey we must take together. It involves continuous effort, resilience, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. We must honor the memory of George Floyd and countless others who have lost their lives to racial injustice by working tirelessly to ensure that their deaths are not in vain. Their stories should fuel our determination to create lasting change. We owe it to them, to ourselves, and to future generations to create a world where Black lives matter in word and in deed. This is a commitment to justice, equality, and the fundamental human rights that every person deserves.